All right, cool. 1 minute again. Screen. All right, so like I said, it's kind of light in terms of it's the summer, light in terms of news and all that. But there were a couple of things. One very timely. It's sort of kind of caught me by surprise. And I said, wait a minute, WordPress 6.8.2 got pushed out today. So I've seen it already on a couple of my sites. And if you haven't seen it yet, maybe you don't have automatic updates turned on through your hosting service, or maybe again, it just hasn't rolled around to you yet. But really, from everything I could gather, I didn't dig too deeply into the details, but it seems, and here's the if you go to WordPress.org in the news, here's really the announcement on it. So it's a bug fix release. We get these quite often. No new features as far as I can tell. A lot of just maintenance releases going back to 6.8. In fact, I think when we met last month, I'm pretty certain the 6.8.1 had just come out. So this is just another maintenance release. One thing that I'm not sure where I saw this, and Peter, I don't know if you can confirm this or not, but I thought I saw something in an article recently that says that perhaps there will be a 6.9 coming out this year. I haven't heard anything definitive on that, so more to come. Have you heard anything about that at all, or?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'll drop a link, and Mr. Matt Mullenweg himself
Hmm.
had made that statement. So Matt Mullenweg is the co-founder of WordPress, and right now the current leader. There's some interesting things going around the Matt Mullenweg world that put a lot of things on hold or delayed, and now he's like, no, we miss doing development. We're putting a lot more resources back in. 6.9 is going to happen this year. And they're even talking about how, and this is one I find really interesting because I have a strong opinion about its importance, but how collaborative editing is going to be the thing that we're going to get. We're going to get very, very soon. And I'm like, I don't know a lot of people who need that except for a couple publishing companies, but okay. But yeah, that's what the link is. A great, if anybody is kind of really interested in a lot of the things that are going on about WordPress, the repository that is the link. I did put it in there. Yeah. So the repository is a phenomenal resource. There's a woman, I think she's from Australia, who does that. She's become. It used to be the WP Tavern website, but that stopped being kind of the main resource a while ago because of writers. But and I'm embarrassed I can't remember her name, but anyway, some great firsthand investigative reporting that happens here. So
good. So 6.9, look for it, and obviously if that comes around this year, we'll certainly probably devote at least a part of a session to it, if not a whole session. So
yeah, December 2nd, they're saying. So
okay, interesting, interesting time frame, but okay. The other thing news-wise, again, WordCamp US coming up next month. So if you're in the Portland area, you can sign up for that. I saw discount codes for it someplace too. So if you're actually going in person, check online first. I think there's a 50% off discount code if you're in the area. So nice to see. Again, I'm curious what will come out of it. As far as I know, it seems to be, I didn't see anything in terms of virtual sessions, but afterwards, in general, I know in the past they've released those on the main WordPress YouTube channel. So keep an eye out for that. Obviously, we'll let everyone know next month if we hear anything more about sessions being released. So that's it for news. Tool or tip, plugins spotlight.
yeah.
Peter, hand it off to you.
Let me grab the screen.
You got it.
All right. So I'm one. I'll show two things that I kind of always use. I mentioned many times before, but the WP.world, and then looking for events and things like that is a great resource. I always kind of double check when we got the calls to see if there's anything else coming up. I'm a big fan of Influence WP, which is a place for really looking for kind of non-biased and best deals that aren't driven by money. What's the word I'm looking for? Affiliate marketing type money that promotes things only. So I like that. And they have giveaways. So here's an example. If you sign up with them and all, then you can get they have new software that comes through. They often do giveaways. But my my tip is something that I use all the time, and I know I mentioned before, but I really do love Perplexity. I'm a big fan of ChatGPT. Claude has helped me, and maybe later if somebody's interested, and I can show some coding that was done with Claude that I could never have done, and it outthought what I was trying to do. But Perplexity has become my place for just asking questions and getting answers, better than often going to like site knowledge bases or things like that, or presenting things when you're troubleshooting. So specifically, I had a site with WooCommerce, and I was running into this problem where something was happening where all of a sudden the shipping wasn't happening, where somebody would put in their address and go, oh, we can't, shipping doesn't work there, and got the error. So by posing the question to Perplexity, I said, I always say hello because they're nice to me. I'm nice to them. I use WordPress WooCommerce. I also use WooCommerce UPS shipping plugin. It's been working okay for a long time now. A payment gateway was changed. I'm not sure if it's related. The issue has recently popped up where I'm getting an error in the checkout screen saying no shipping options were found. Please point me in the right direction, in the direction of some things that I should check. So I'm prompting it to help me do some troubleshooting efficiently. And the answer it came back was, really actually very helpful. Check shipping zones and methods and tell me where to go do this. Make sure that I've got product weight. All these were in place. Make sure the plugin is properly configured. But really, conflicts. I like this payment gateway. It's unlikely to directly affect shipping. Plugin conflicts can happen. And then, I get my little shorthand kind of thing. And then I think in one of the things I said, well, that plugin is outdated. It's been working, a lot of times you have plugins that last for a long time. So then I came back in and I posed the questions. Again, I came back at it simplified to say, okay, maybe I gave it too much. So again, this is that whole AI engineering, but asking, I said, what if I just ask, I'm getting this error. What might it be? And then just in going through things, basically, we went through a process where it was like, you probably have an outdated plugin. And in fact, it recommended a different plugin for me that, it said, go to your developer. I'm looking at this under, and that's where I found out UPS changed the way that they authenticate when you're connected with a UPS account. So it was under this legacy system, but that is now stopped. You have to do some authentic. So I said, I don't see an option for what you kind of just told me. And then the reason is it uses us. So we're going through a little process of discovery, and it's given me some, again, troubleshooting things. And I said, okay, I'm using the older version of the plugin, and then it gave me suggestions on what to do. Now, what I thought was really interesting, I said, are there other plugins that compare favorably with UPS shipping? I'm like, well, I'm fine. If I have to update that plugin, what else could I use? It gave me some options, and then even getting into the summary table of what each one offers. And it's just, I say volunteering, but it's providing me, Perplexity is providing me this extended answer that helps me. And then I said, okay, I'm interested in this WooCommerce UPS shipping plugin with print label. Please compare that directly with the WooCommerce UPS shipping method, which was the plugin I had. I want to know if I should upgrade or switch. Right. And then it gave me the specific answers of what one does over the other, what its advantages are, kind of the pros and cons of some things. And I looked at it and I was like, I switched to the new one, and it gave me the tools that I needed to understand why switching to this other plugin made sense, including the fact that they are an authorized UPS integrated tool that I didn't know about until asking the question. And this didn't take me a whole long time. If I had to troubleshoot this without this kind of, you know, compiled AI managed response, it might have taken me a heck of a long time to hone in on kind of the key things. And now it works. I got the new plugin, configured it. The authentication happens directly through them, which saves the whole step, which was really neat. So that plugin, it's a premium plugin, it's a paid plugin, but it works. But my tip is, if you're not using Perplexity, give it a shot with your troubleshooting. I use it when I specifically say I'm having a problem with, or I have a question about a particular software. And because it has access to kind of all of these knowledge bases and all, you can get some pretty good answers, especially when you're comparing one thing to another, or when you're saying, I have this software loaded in, I have this plugin loaded in this version of WordPress with, WooCommerce or whatever. So that's my tip. Give perplexity.ai a chance when you're doing things like, I find it faster than, like I said, going to a website that has a knowledge base where I have to do a search and then I have to go look at all their articles and I'm looking at the titles and I'm trying to find the things in it. And I said, you know what? I can be very specific with my question and I can get some very specific answers.
I think the key also, and you kind of went through this quickly, Peter, is that I think, and you've done this before, you're good at defining a persona to say, here's who I am, and here's my context to then do the search. So I know Sue put, I think, a link in the chat too around like prompt engineering, but that's such a key thing too that really can change your results. So if you're saying I am a WordPress developer, et cetera, and I know there's templates out there too you can search for to say, like help you refine and define your persona. But I think that's a real key part too if you're new to kind of AI prompting, of like making sure that the answers you get are within the right context of you, as opposed to if you're a Java developer or something else, the answers,
Right.
you're talking WordPress, but the answers you get are going to be completely different. So that's I think
For
a key thing.
example, in Chat GPT, you can not only can you set up this is who I am, but then when you create specific projects, and if you do kind of all your WordPress under like a WordPress project, then whenever you're in there, it says, "Oh yeah, you're the WordPress guy." We've had some of these. Yeah, it also learns some of those things to kind of provide that information. But in turn, I know a lot of folks are kind of like a little iffy on AI, and when it comes to things like content generation, yeah, I can understand. There's a lot of what they're calling slop now, that happens. But when it comes to these kinds of question and answer things where you're really trying to get to, I have saved so much time in troubleshooting using any of the AI tools. I find for this kind of thing, Perplexity is sort of the best at saying question answer, that type of thing. So
it's also good for vacation planning. That's my
yes,
my other
right?
free tip. I'm going to XYZ place for this amount of time. I like to do XYZ. Give me some ideas. Well, make sure it's not hallucinating though when you do that. So
Yeah, you do have to check.
all right. So like I said, this is summer session. So we don't have a formal topic. So we're going to talk about whatever people want us to talk about. And formally, I see Eileen has kicked off with something. And this is a good one because I don't think we've talked about this in a while, but just Google Search Console, Google Analytics. And let me 1 second, Eileen, I'll make it so you can unmute yourself as well too, if you like. There we go. But yeah, so there's a couple of parts to this. We've done some deep dives in the past into Google Analytics, in terms of metrics and understanding things. So I'd encourage you to go back to our YouTube channel and search for some of those videos as well. We used to have Bill, who was a guy who was one of our kind of co-hosts for this meetup, hasn't been around for a while, but that was kind of Bill's main skill set is setting that up and configuring it and stuff. So I won't do that level of justice to it, but and Peter and others certainly chime in here too. But So in terms of Google Analytics, there's a couple of parts to it. It's a vast topic. I used to have a book here for it, and I think I got rid of it not too long ago because it's changed a lot too. And that's one of the challenges is it's a very changing, dynamic topic. And because of things like AI that Peter said, and lots of Google rule changes, et cetera, et cetera. But just kind of in general, I'd say there's a couple of parts to it. One is on your website, installing some code which then connects it to Google Search Console, Google Analytics, so that you can then, that's okay, Eileen, so that you can then do your tracking. So that's kind of, we can talk about that a little bit. We can talk about the kind of the physical, not physical, but like the process, the nuts and bolts of that. But I think one thing that's also important, probably as important early on before you start diving into code, is either talking with, if you're working for a client or yourself, your website, figure out what are you tracking? What are those key performance things that you want to track? So again, in businesses, key performance indicators, et cetera. So think about if you're a e-commerce site, you want to have a lot of your tracking done to things, e-commerce related events, right? Like, how many people put something into a shopping basket, how many sales are completed, product things. There's a ton of, kind of tracking you can do it at that level. If you're not an e-commerce site, there's still probably things you can and should track. So for example, you want to do things like, maybe you have a page on your site that I'm thinking of, like I'll show an example in a second, like a nonprofit. So maybe there's a site where it's a sign up for a newsletter or a membership site or something like that. So those are things too that when you're starting to build your analytics, you don't want to just track like pages and page views and things like that. So yeah, KPI is a key performance indicator, just a business term. Like, depending on what you're in. If you're a nonprofit, your KPI could be donations. How many donations do we get per month? I'm going to show you an animal shelter one where it's something like that. It's donations, or it's people looking at their adoption pages, et cetera, et cetera. If you're, again, e-commerce, it's sales. So think about that part too, because I think one thing that's changed quite a bit now, especially in Google Analytics, what was it, 4, I think was the biggest, the most recent one. They kind of reworked it a lot so that those events are things that are easier to track than they used to be. It used to be really, it was more a bit of a pain to try to track down that level, but I think there's things that are exposed more now that are a bit easier to track. So um, I'll show a couple of just real basic high level things around analytics. And Eileen, let me know if it kind of answers your question, or we can jump around to different details of it. Peter, anything else just context wise before I start jumping around a bit?
Yeah, so I don't use Google Analytics anymore to much degree because for a couple of reasons, and a lot of times it was the whole change over to things and kind of follow it and all. So you know, it doesn't change at all. In fact, it reinforces what you were saying, Ray, what you're trying to measure. But I am using independent analytics, which is a plugin, and it's a free plugin, but there's a premium version, and I have it. The premium version I'm using on a site that allows you to track down to using tracking codes and all those types of things that you can do. But it all works off of the site versus having to use Google. Now, Google Search Console is a little bit different, right? So, Search Console with getting everything indexed and all, but you know that using Google Analytics has become, or it never was the only solution. It felt like it was the only solution, but there are others, and there's a few, like if you're in WordPress, and a few WordPress plugins, and even on the server side, you may have a host that does a lot of analytics for you, kind of thing. So there are options, and I can kind of give a quick look at the independent analytics if we're interested afterwards. But
Yeah.
yeah, Ray, if you're still practicing it, I'll be watching what you're doing.
This is the whole, well, my thing too is I've set these things up a long time ago. I don't go in there anymore and tweak them. So I will, again, that's my caveat too. Some of the things I'm showing you were best practices years ago. They've changed a bit. And I think, as you're kind of alluding to as well, Peter, that some of the value of what you can track now has changed a lot. So just, again, for example, we'll start looking at stuff in a second. But it used to be back in the good old days, you could track a lot more things around keyword searches. You could track a lot more kind of, again, demographics sort of around who's visiting your site. A lot of stuff now, because of various reasons, obviously not the goodness of Google's heart, but the European Union, for one, a lot of things you used to be able to track now are more anonymized. So you don't quite get what you used to get. And again, to be honest, in the past, how trustworthy was that information? Who knows? So, but Eileen, I'll talk a little bit about, I'll start on kind of the WordPress side of things, just to say again, so if you're brand new to this, there's a lot easier ways to do this kind of than what I'm showing. In fact, I would say if you're starting off with a brand new site that has no other analytics installed on it, I would probably just use the actual Google Analytics plugin just for starters, because it's you know they wrote it. It connects. It's kind of probably one of the easiest ways to connect your site to Search Console and all that. But I'll show you kind of the harder way, because this is what it used to be like, or I should say harder way, but there's multiple ways to do it. So this is an old site that I still maintain against a nonprofit organization in Waltham, Mass. Cats, we like our animals here. So I've been supporting this site for years. But anyway, this site also was written in a page builder, so Divi. So at the time, and this was a common way to do it. So when I'll skip over the setting up the Search Console and analytics and that piece for now. I'll jump into that piece later. But let's say once you set that up, you've connected your property to it. In the past, you generally would get a piece of code from Search Console, which you then have to save to your site someplace. In general, you'd save that to like a header, the header of your WordPress site, because the header is everywhere. So every page would naturally inherit that. So if you're maintaining an older site, or a site that has no other way to add that information, so I'm just showing you again Divi here in Divi. I think it's been a while. I think it's actually under options. Sorry, theme options. You would see things like, where is it? Integration. Here we go. So you would add this tag to the top of the head of your blog. So what does that mean? That means if you looked at this code in the source here under this head. Yep.
If you're trying to share, I don't see your
Oh,
share.
I'm sorry. Yep. Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Thank you. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. So again, this is the site that I was talking about. This is again a cat nonprofit site. As I said, the theme is Divi. So in the past, this was one of the quickest ways to do it, was under the theme itself, under theme options. You had this place, and certain other themes, if you have more of a legacy theme, probably had places like this. This one is called integration. They had a place for you to stick this code. There were also plugins in the past that allowed you to insert things into the head of your, it says blog, but it's basically your website. So again, the reason you wanted that there is because this code, this tracking code, was the unique thing that would connect your site off to Google Analytics. So that's the connection part. And this is probably the old way of doing it, was to actually put the code into a place on your theme, or way old days would be actually editing the theme files themselves, adding this code. It's a script. It's a script code that runs every time a page loads. So what this does is, if you look at the actual page itself, in here in the head, which is the HTML, there's a spot in here somewhere. I'm not sure if I can find it anywhere. There's so much stuff in here. But anyway, in here is the code that kind of triggers that call back to analytics. So real high level, the way this works is every time this page loads, just at a general level, it will send back some sort of communication to Google Analytics. And that's how you can just track basic things. Where things get more complicated is when you want to get more granular to certain events. So that's where Google Tag Manager used to be the primary way to do that. So that's another tool that you can track things down to a more discrete level. So for example, let's say I just want to track every time somebody clicks on the donate, or every time somebody scrolls down a page. And if I have a blog, for example, I want to track every time somebody scrolls down over 50% of the page. That level of tracking, that event tracking, those were additional scripts that you could then add to your page, additional events that you could track. So in the past, it was a bit more complicated. You had to use multiple tools to do it. With Google Analytics 4, you can track those things a lot simpler. I'm not going to install it because the site already has, I think it already has installed. But if you just search for the plugin, Google Analytics, I believe. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's called now SiteKit. If I was starting a brand new blank site, this is probably the thing I would install just to, if you need that level of granularity, and it's a quick way to connect things together. The other way, just in terms of back to the website, the other way you can connect it is, let's say you don't want to install this plugin. Let's say you don't have a theme where you can add things. You may have an SEO plugin, like I'm using SEO Press in this example. SEO Press also in its settings has an analytics part where this is another place I could have added that code to. So that's the WordPress side of things. It's fairly straightforward. WordPress side, you're just going to be adding tracking code. You're just going to be figuring out what things do I really want to track. That's the hook part of it, if you will. Now, on the other side of things, the analytics side, so first off, again, I'm just going to show Search Console here again, this is a little bit different than analytics itself, but they've changed this a lot now too. And to be honest, I haven't looked at this site in a while to see some of the things it has, but AI is everywhere. So what's kind of nice is they've added a lot of stuff here where you don't necessarily need to even understand completely how to read some of the events and triggering. So there were a lot of things that in the past were kind of complicated to understand, meaning, for example, if somebody jumped from one page to another and they left and they waited a while and they came back, there was always this confusion around like sessions, like did they leave? The bounce rate was something that used to really freak people out in the past. Like did they really leave? Did they really bounce? Did they, all that kind of stuff. So unless you really need to get to that level of granularity, and some people do. Again, if you're running an e-commerce site, that's probably quite different. You do want to understand some of the reasons why somebody may be abandoning a shopping cart. But I'm just talking, a simple site. You can just pretty much get most of the information you need from the Google dashboard. And the plugin, I don't know, Peter, if you've used that, the official one or not, the Search Console. I think that it has kind of there's a little bit of a dashboard there that gets included on the site too. I'd have to find a site that has it on there. So you might not even need to go out to something like Analytics or Search Console to look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's been a long time since needing that. That's again why things like I like independent analytics, because it's all in WordPress right there.
Yeah. But I will say the one other tool, and I'll shut up in a second too, is, and I haven't set this one up in a while, but it used to be called Google Data Studio. Now it's called Looker Studio. This is something that I used to set up for clients, and it's more, as Google Analytics has changed, it's sort of broken over time, so it's not as good as it used to be. But my clients really loved this. This was a report that got sent out weekly or so, and it's all gathering data from analytics. So using Data Studio, kind of this business intelligence reporting thing, I was able to send to like the stakeholders to say, how many people are visiting? What's the change per week? Where are they coming from? What devices? A lot of this data now, to be honest, I wouldn't stake my life on it, just because, again, that what they're tracking has changed quite a bit. But it does allow you to at least see some trends, so what are the popular pages, what session sources, again, where are people coming from? This was a nice way to give a friendly report to people who will never access WordPress on the back end. There's other tools that can do this too. Setting this thing up, to be honest, now in Looker Studio is a little bit of a pain from what it used to be. But this was a nice way. In the past, I would have this automated, and I still do have it for many clients automated. So once a week, they'll get this thing. My problem with this is it's pretty fragile. So whenever they've changed things, the site is I've had to go back to this. Sometimes the thing won't get sent out for weeks, and I got to go back and fix it. So I don't build these anymore. I don't offer them. I just kind of repair the ones that have been out there. So Eileen, as your hand is raised, hopefully.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you for the tutorial. That's like a week packed in 15 minutes.
Sorry.
No, it's perfect. So what I was reading is that, see, I agree with you on Google Analytics. I think it's complex. It's not easy to learn. It's not that easy to develop reports. You have to, like you say, the KPIs. However, that's the most marketable, and I'm in the job search right now.
Mhm.
So what I did notice was that sometimes you can do things a certain way depending on your hosting platform. For instance, it might have been Hootsuite. It allows you to upload the verification key via a text file. So, and then I read on a blog where a guy was saying I wasn't able to add the verification code because my hosting service says I have to be on a higher level. So I guess it's hit or miss and trying different
Well,
things.
the verification code I think you're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, is that's more in terms of verifying that you actually own or manage the website or domain. So
You're right.
yeah,
Yeah.
because Hootsuite, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's more of like a social
I'm
media.
sorry, I used the wrong term.
Yeah.
I meant another hosting
Yeah,
service.
yeah, for example, like Bluehost or whatever, it's basically you need the ability to at least be an admin so that you can add that tracking code to the site itself, to pages. So yes, that's one
Yeah.
thing. So if you don't have WordPress itself, you can be, let's say, an editor or contributor
Mhm.
or something. You wouldn't have the ability to actually touch the site to add that kind of script code to it.
So it doesn't let you play with analytics or Google Search Console until you do the verification, I noticed.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and you also want to make sure too. I used to have it. There's a plugin. If you use Chrome, there's a Chrome plugin, I believe, where you can validate that the code is implemented properly. It used to be called
yeah,
Google Tag
yeah, I
Manager
saw that. Yeah.
That was,
Verifier. Peter's like, yeah, that
that was
old
the one.
thing. Yeah, that would let you at least verify because in the past too, you may think you've implemented it properly, but you're not really capturing things. And
I
you
have
get,
to say, Ray, that there's a Google guy, I think his name is Daniel Weisberg or something, and he does a series of tutorials and he's pretty good.
I'll have to
yeah.
look that up. Yeah. The whole topic of, and with the DNS domain name servers, the domain name system, and being able to have access to one where your domain is registered, and then how you can access the what's registered is kind of a nice thing to know. It's very helpful because
Mhm.
it seems mysterious, and it can get complicated. And I will tell you, a quick aside, I have a client, an ex-client. They haven't been a client for a couple of years, because a really good company that I know actually took them on as pro bono and things like that. However, they have an IT company that they work with, and something happened with their domain. They
Mhm.
forgot that a bill was forgotten to be paid, and then they had their DNS records, which are all the little records that say, "Oh, your website is at this IP address, your email is through this system." That's also where you can do things like put these verification codes. You go and there's a text
Mhm.
code and put in this long string, and all. So now it says
Mhm.
the whenever these services are looking to verify, they go, "Oh, you have control of the domain because you put that record in, and that's what we need to
Mhm.
see, that you have control of the domain." But it's very important to kind of at least be aware of what you can and can't do, kind of understand that, because in this particular case with and whoever their IT people, person, company that I won't share here, but man, I wouldn't recommend them because it took a month, 4 weeks for them to get something that it was just DNS records, and partly because there was yet another service involved, something called Cloudflare, which some folks here may use. I used it for about 10 minutes and I didn't like it. Other people swear by the use of this word, and all the things that Cloudflare brings to the table when managing your DNS records and all those little things that point to and the security behind it. But man, when you don't know how that works, and they had a problem with caching on their system, And I was like, just ditch Cloudflare, at least for the time being, until you can figure that one out. Go back to your regular hosting DNS, manage your records there, take that variable out, and your site will be up in an hour. And
Mhm.
it took 4 weeks because the client just didn't know as much as I tried to explain, but they were relying on their IT people. So you just kind of get triggered for me this idea of kind of all the little things that need to work, and that domain registration, the DNS records. That's why email works the way email works, because you have an MX record, which is
Mhm.
mail exchange. It knows, oh, your email goes to Google, your email goes to Outlook, your email goes to some other
Right.
system. So anyway, thanks
So
for letting me.
Yeah, but like Sue was saying, there's other ways to do it, of course.
Yeah,
But the way where you upload the file is the fastest way, and you get almost an immediate verification. And as you say, Peter, this jogs your mind. It's like,
yeah,
oh, well, how much do I know this or that?
and you
yeah,
probably, so that thing you're talking about, I think, Eileen, is probably verifying it for Search Console as
Right,
opposed to analytics. Yeah. So
right.
Search Console, I kind of probably made things a little bit more confusing by sort of combining the two of them together, whereas there really are separate things that unfortunately over time I think um, have kind of grown to almost look like the same thing. So for example, let me get into my analytics here. Sorry, and I know I'm not sharing my screen, so just give me 1 second here. So again, for people who don't know, here's really I will share my screen. That's where. Sorry, I had to get all these pop-up windows.
Ray, I'm going to upload something that tells you the difference, okay?
Yeah, no, I know. I just don't use
No,
them.
I know you know. I know you know.
But yeah, here is as Eileen is saying, like, so I had jumped into Search Console because in a lot of ways, Search Console to me has always been sort of the friendlier way to look at things.
Mhm.
Console used to be the way that you could actually, long time ago, get an idea of the search terms that people were using to search for your site. I don't think that's really been all that accurate in quite a long time. Analytics. So here's again, I'm just showing you kind of the same site over and over again. Analytics. This is the much more detailed overview. So this is where you'll see a ton of information. So if you recall, like that client dashboard report I was showing, this is where all the data comes from. It comes from analytics. So again, to make things more confusing, that data studio report, you have to connect it to the analytics thing, and then you pick out your metrics and all this kind of crazy stuff. But basically, analytics, this is what it's showing. So any given time, it'll show you
Mhm.
reports, et cetera, et cetera. One last thing too is I said about if you really need to drill down deeper, this is where Tag Manager,
Mhm.
yeah, another Google tool. This is where that thing came into play. In the past, I haven't touched these in 6 years, but this is the way you used to drill down to certain events. So, for example, on that website, we had something where it was if somebody clicked on one of their contact tags or something like that. So I had a trigger on that click, external links too. So we're trying to see how often people are going out, how often people are joining the mailing list, how often people are calling. You can get to that level, and I would have that separately in the report too, just to tell them more about what's going on their site. There's easier ways to do this now than there used to be, but this was the old way. So
So basically, what I learned is that the Search Console, which you hinted at, is probably not as useful. Is more for your site health, your pages,
your trends,
what's
yeah.
working, what's not, and the analytics is for who's coming to your site, what are they doing, and so forth. And that's really what people want to know about.
Yeah, well, it depends on who you're talking about. So if it's again, WordPress is a great example of if the site is primarily bloggers, maybe you do want to know your trending content. This site I like using this as an example because they wrote this article. They wrote this blog post. I think I've shown this before, Peter. You've probably seen this too. They wrote this blog post. I forget how many years ago, 3 years ago, It's all about the art of reading cat toes, reading, they call it toe beans. This was their #1 article for years. And this thing would just drive so much traffic to the site. It's ridiculous. I don't know why, but it's one of those, long tail kind of things. So just something like that, you may not necessarily see. Analytics, to me, the problem with it is it's so much data. You really have to know what you're looking for, I would say, before you go to analytics. Whereas, and especially the AI tools, kind of what Peter was showing as well. I mean, that's really the future. A lot of that's getting built into the Google tools is, and I think I closed this pop-up. When I first opened up Search Console, where was it? There was something in, Insights. And I think this is also, I probably closed it. When I first opened this, it gave me a little pop-up here. There was kind of an AI chatbot thing. It was like, what are you looking for? What are you interested in? So it's going to have the ability to drill down into different things for you. So personally, I think the future is going to be more of this and more of the AI interaction
Mhm.
with your site, as
Mhm.
Peter was showing too, as opposed to this stuff is confusing is what, and just trying to figure out what you're looking
Well,
for.
Ray, you can integrate the two tools now, the analytics and the search console.
Yeah, I think they kind of are pulling from like this, a
Mhm.
lot of this information, like the core web vitals and et cetera,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff too.
Okay, I'm
So
going to mute myself. Thank you so much.
yep, no problem. Great question. Yeah, it's one, again, we've done some sessions out in the past. It's tough,
Yeah.
and again, just for new folks too, um, don't feel overwhelmed by these topics. And I'd also say, we said this before too, kind of know what you can control. So, and besides analytics, we've talked, I think even last month, about things like SEO, search engine optimization. Everyone wants to know that because, again, it's an important thing. You're running, you've created a website. It's like you want people to see it, but there's only certain things that you can control versus stuff outside of your control. And there's this whole kind of black magic piece around, why is my site #1? And then it's not. So what led to that? Some of that stuff you could find through data. Some of it, who knows? Things change so frequently. It's kind of hard to keep up. So
Yeah.
I'm sort of like you, Peter, that I have analytics set up just as kind of, that's always been my standard practice,
Yeah.
setting it up to things, but
Yeah. So first of all, Eileen put in Measure School, and measureschool.com has been a long-term, really good resource for this. They've done a lot of free content, they've paid content. I haven't visited them in a long time, but they were always a go-to resource. Another resource, I'll put the link in. It's just a YouTube channel. It's a Google channel, the Google Analytics channel, and there's a lot of really helpful things there. I look at, for me, Search Console is the thing that you do as part of your setup to make sure that your indexing is happening, that you're pointing to your sitemap, however you have your sitemap set up, and a way to check things and then be on alert when something goes wrong, where you might get an alert from Search Console saying, hey, we found you've got like broken links or whatever it does. It's sort of, for me, always been just in the background, kind of a set it and forget it kind of thing. Just a way to make sure that Google is aware of where the sitemaps are and things like that. But yeah, the analytics have gotten, you know, it depends on what, again, exactly what you're saying to kind of bookend this is what you're trying to measure, what's valuable, what type of company you are, to what level of targeting you're doing. Major corporations have people focused on looking at the tiniest little things in analytics, but for a lot of us, that's just, it's overkill, it's confusing, things change, things like that. When you're like, you literally want to see, hey, I put up this new post, and anybody look at it, right? So that's sort of the, so there's different ways of doing that, and maybe even using some of these non Google tools for the analytics side of things. Also, if the GDPR cookies kind of thing is a concern for you, when you do everything on your site, you're not telling Google anything about the traffic to your site directly, so therefore you don't have to have that particular cookie announcement. And if you don't do anything else with it, you could throw away the not to open the can of worms of GDPR and cookies and all, but that's if you're doing things like having your site information go elsewhere. And if you're not doing that, and you're measuring everything locally and all, then that's
You're safe.
that's kind of a neat thing that gets into its own, and the idea of ethical analytics and things like that. There are other tools for that too, but this idea of saying, well, we're not logging everything on our site with Google kind of stuff. There's a
And I'll show real quick. So Eileen also mentioned, if people aren't familiar with the screaming frog. Yes, that's another tool. I guess I wouldn't say it's necessarily like Search Console. I tend to use Screaming Frog, and there's other tools like this. So this one, the free version gives you a limited number of URLs you can crawl. I tend to still use this quite a bit when I'm launching a site, or if I'm making some major updates to site, make sure I didn't break anything. So this is a tool that crawls your site and finds every available link. And where I tend to use this for is more, we've done some site audits here, Peter and I, and again, if anyone wants to volunteer their site, even tonight, we're happy to take a look at it. But it's a great tool for finding problems. So like, for
Yeah.
example, it'll tell you, if you have large image files, it'll tell you broken links. I mean, I tend to use it a lot for this. This is my site. So yeah, and you want to actually have redirects and things like that. So, or let's say you want to find, a particular page. Let me see, like the About Us page. This will tell you what page is linked to it and what it links out to, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, it is a little bit different than Search Console. I think Search Console is more about external access or interactions with your site. To me, this is I use it very much as an internal thing to make sure, my site structure is another nice thing it has here. Check out my site structure to make sure it makes sense. It's kind of it gives you tons of information though, so it's another one that can be quite overwhelming. So you kind of have to know what problems you're looking for before you go in and look at it. So just want to throw that. If people aren't familiar with this, that's Screaming Frog.
I've used it as part of, Eileen mentions, as part of a migration. When if you take on a client or somebody says, hey, can you work on my site, if that's something that you do, and this is a great kind of tool to analyze things and go, things are in order, or wow, we got a lot of problems we got to deal with. It's great for that kind of thing. What I haven't tried to do is can I simulate some of these things? I found that I can simulate a lot of what these tools do using some of the AI tools by directing it to now that there's so much. So that'll be an interesting experiment to see, what subset of the tools, and that's really where I come at it. It's like, these things have been developed over years and they get into such a level of detail. For me, it'd be like, okay, there's like one thing that I want to kind of check regularly. Can I do that through something else, like maybe an AI tool that says, go scrape the site and tell me what links don't work or something.
I think my thing with the AI tools is more of it's having an expert to kind of distill the knowledge of what is this data telling me. I mean, that's where I see the key for these tools is, like I said, Google Analytics and all that stuff. There's so much data in there. There really is. And it used to be, again, if I was telling some young kid today of what field you want to get into, I wouldn't tell them to get into like analytics itself. As I showed, all these different parts. It used to be a very technical field to connect things together. These days, I don't know. I think it's more about making the sort of insights from the data, which maybe it always was. That was the big thing. But I think AI can certainly help with that. So. Good topic. Good warm-up topic, Eileen. Thank you so much. I'm sure, meanwhile, as we've been talking, lots of other suggestions have been flooding the chat, right, Peter?
Just talking about what we're talking about. I think I've been so engaged.
I saw.
You ever get, and I apologize for not remembering the person who gave us a website to actually go over.
She hasn't showed up again.
Oh, there was so much to go over in that website.
I know.
Oh, D, is that you?
Oh, there you are. I'm sorry.
The Farmington site? Is it Farmington? Did I remember that correctly?
Yep. D, you can unmute yourself too. You should be able to unmute yourself. So I didn't see you on the. I apologize, D. I didn't see your video pop up there. This was the Farmington Historical Society.
Yes.
Right. All right.
How deep you want to get into it tonight?
We got time. You're here.
No, we're already at 6:59, so I don't want to keep everybody. How
We have
about
another,
next time?
we have
We
another
go to
hour. So we're good. I don't think we'll go full hour. We can do it for a few minutes or so, at least to kind of set the context of things. So how about let me, before I even sign into like the back end of the site, hold on, give me a second. Let me clear up all my crazy tabs. So this, Farmington, I'll break it up in a second, Historical Society. So give us a background again. You've taken over the site, or you're in the process of redesigning the site? Is that the background?
I have taken over the site. It's a volunteer job. Um, there were obviously other people handling it, but they're not readily available anymore.
Hmm.
And basically, I really want to dump the whole thing and start from scratch to build a new website. It's very, very clunky, very unwieldy. Um, Simple things are easy enough to do, but some of the things are so convoluted, and I've looked into it and looked into it and looked into it, and I still can't find the answers.
Yeah.
And this is, remind me, I can find out myself, but you know off the top of your head, this is a WordPress site currently, correct?
Correct.
Built on WordPress. Okay. So that's good. Again, that it's sort of for folks who aren't familiar, like I think I have just been rebuilding another historical society's website, and that one was all HTML, and so that's kind of a different rebuild problem. And we had a session a few months ago about rebuild or redesign.
Right.
So again, folks want to go back and watch it on our YouTube channel. So the good thing is because
As soon as I saw this, that's exactly, I'm like, oh, this is the rebuild or
yeah.
redesign, and this is a rebuild in my opinion.
But I think the good news is, again, because it's already WordPress, that's a lot easier to do a redesign on top of what you have. So just to kind of talk through things a little bit, you know, there's probably a lot of content here that you want to save. You know, for example, images. I assume when I say content, I mean things like this. Again, this could turn out to be, you know, nicer with pictures and all that, but the actual text itself, most likely you're going to save 90%
Yes.
of this, right?
Yes.
Maybe you know, update some things, et cetera, et cetera. You know, timeline, you know, stuff like that. So that's a good thing. So in a sense, you've got a lot to work with. You know, now the question is going to be kind of starting. I would almost say the step back is, what do you want it to look like? What's the end goal? And I think, Dee, I shared with you. Give me 1 second here. I'm just pausing my screen because I got to find where I have the documents. I was just looking.
So Ray, while you're doing that, chiming in, and before you even go in the back end, one of the tools that I use, I've shared with a few times, and we have new people, I'll put the link in, is the WP theme detector, which is a great way to kind of, when you first come across a WordPress website, maybe there's something on it you like, and hey, what plugins are you using, or what theme is this running on? Is a WordPress site in the first place? And you'll probably find out, but the theme provider author is farmington.com, which tells me this is a custom theme, and it's probably, as we could see, very, very old. So a lot of the things that you're looking at might be so coded directly into the theme itself that, like you say, gee, where did that come from? You may have, I've come across this where there are pieces of content that are hard coded into the theme, which are almost impossible to find until you start deconstructing code. So that again becomes like, well, that becomes a cut and paste of the content from the front end into like a new theme. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, so I was going to say again, because I kind of faced this problem too, as you probably maybe remember, Dee. Here's the one that I'm redoing and pretty much done with now. This is the old one. But it's very similar, very similar, old text things. And again, this one's not WordPress at all. So where I started with this was I kind of treated it as if I was doing a new redesign or new build, I should say. So when I started working with my organization, I said, hey, let me find some examples of sites that I think are good looking modern sites. Now let me articulate to the organization why I think those are good looking modern sites. So just again, you can feel free to agree or disagree with these and find your own examples, but this is my process. So for example, I didn't want to overwhelm them, but I found around like 5 sites that I liked and that eventually they also agreed and liked. So again, I stuck with Connecticut, and this is just for anyone. Again, if you're thinking of redesigning something, it helps that the audience you're speaking to, you find something that at least is within their domain. So that page is loading a little bit slow. Let me show you. So this one I liked. So I like the Glastonbury Historical Society. Compelling picture, clean looking, modern looking, events. That to me, this was like, I like this one a lot. Enfield, very similar, modern looking. I can do without the animations and all that stuff, but overall a nice looking design. I'll just show one more, which was the one that they like. They like Torrington, for example. Another modern looking, but they all look unique. So you're not thinking cookie cutter, but I think at least having this in mind, having sort of the end state in mind, really will help you before you begin, because that's going to help you determine back to your site, what do you want this homepage to look like? Maybe you do want a slider. Like if I look at the Torrington one, for example, this is a slider, but it's a big full screen slider, right? It's maybe 1080 by whatever, 900 or something, or I'm sorry, 1080 by 960 or whatever. Maybe you want to keep your pictures here, but you want to get rid of the borders. Your site right now is, bordered or fixed or boxed, whatever you want to call it. So this picture can look great if it's really a full screen picture like that. So, again, that's the kind of stuff where don't throw everything away. Maybe you just want to get rid of the upcoming events is this little postage stamp. Maybe isn't the best way to do it. Maybe you just want the events just sort of like, what was it, Glastonbury? You just want it here. And that's, now you start thinking about, well, how do I do that? Well, now you have a theme where this is probably the events calendar, I assume, the events calendar block. So you start with the brand, and the way I built the site, again, it's not nothing special about my design here is, this is the Newington one that I'm almost done with. But it's I built the homepage first, got the buy-in from them, and so they're like, oh, we like this. It's a lot cleaner, looks a lot more, a lot more dynamic and all that. So that was kind of the starting point is, find the design that you like. And then from a technology standpoint, almost anything that we've showed before in terms of, themes like Cadence, we throw that one out quite a bit. Cadence can build anything. And it can reuse a lot of what you have in your site already. So what in particular, like if you have blogs, are there any blog posts in here?
No. Ray, I've already done a lot of what you are suggesting.
Okay.
So most of the issues are centered around the fact that I can't make some simple changes to the way it is now.
When you say changes, I guess, do you mean like, are you building a new site on the side and you want to?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. It's just, for instance, you're looking at the home page right now,
Mm-hmm.
and in the upper right, you see Farmington Freedom Trail Tours event date June 7th. Well, that's not true. It's on multiple dates
Okay.
for June, July, August, and September. But I cannot figure out what's driving that to post that date there.
Okay.
And the whole timeline thing is just a beast.
So let's look at a couple of things. All right, so let's put aside the redesign because that thing, it sounds like if you've got that under
Yes,
control.
I'm sorry if I misled
No,
you.
that's okay. That's okay. I think meanwhile you've got the immediate issues of like, okay, you've got to keep this, got to keep the plane flying while you're, whatever, changing wings and.
There you go.
So give me 1 second here. Let me stop sharing for 1 second. I just want to do one thing here. I want to stop. I'm trying to come in. That's good. And so I'm going to sign in. So Dee, you gave Peter and myself access to the site. So I'm just going to sign in if that's okay. I'm not going to change anything or update anything, but I need to be able to at least look at the site in a bit of detail. And this is great. So what we'll do is we will do some research. See, Bob, thanks for joining us. We'll do some research together and kind of show, see if we can figure out what's going on with your site. I think will be a good learning thing.
Yeah.
All right, so here I am. We're back in your site. Let me close up all this stuff. Close that up. All right, so let's look at, and Peter, you can sign in. Are you signing in as well on your side? Just so we can flip back and forth between shares if we like.
I'm in.
Okay. So let's look at kind of what, so Peter said at first, in terms of, things to understand. So whenever I inherit a site, I want to understand as much as I can about current state. So what I typically will look at are things like, first off, the number one is what theme is being used. So as Peter said, if I look here, it's using this Farmington Historical Society theme. Most likely, if I go to theme details, yes, it's probably a custom theme that was built. If we need to, we can look at the theme a bit. I'm going to caution anybody here, you can view the theme files here. I wouldn't suggest you generally do that on a live site unless you really know what you're doing. So, but if we need to, we can look at the theme files here. The safer way to do this would be to either have a local copy of the site or download the theme someplace. That's a whole separate discussion. But anyway, so the theme is the first thing. The second thing I like to understand too is more around what plugins are installed, because plugins can also make a big difference in terms of how a site works, how a site looks. So let's kind of see what we have here. Copy and delete. So these are kind of spam protection, pretty simple. Constant. So these are just forms. Copy and delete posts. That's pretty simple. An event post, add event calendar, metadata on a post. Okay, that's gonna be interesting. Jetpack. That's gonna have a lot of like SEO stuff. Boost, opt-in monster. Also, this is like kind of pop-ups, etc. Page links to and publish, press, future. Okay, I guess that's just a future publishing thing. And then kind of finally, if I look at the home page, right, this seems like a very specific template. So this doesn't seem to me like, if I look at some of your other pages, they don't seem to follow that same look. So is there anything we can see in terms of widgets, perhaps? So again, how is this site built? Oh no, this is still using the old. These are the archives. I was wondering if that thing was a widget area on the front. No, it's not. Okay. So it's probably going to be inside of the theme, or if I look at the page, the home page, where is your home page? In general,
Hey, Ray?
Yep, go ahead.
It's all in the code.
Okay.
It's all in the theme code. There are right widget PHP, registration process PHP. Basically, there are so many PHP files.
Okay, so let's look at this for a second. So this is kind of funny too. Oh, not funny. Oh dear. What's your homepage? I really can't tell, because there's going to be a theme in here that, that's really controlling all of that. All right, so I'm going to look at, again, I'm not going to save anything, so we'll make sure we're very, very careful. Yep, it's a heads up. I understand. So as Peter was saying, now we're looking at the raw theme itself. So this is where it gets to be the bad news, D. That unfortunately the theme, as Peter was saying, is I don't know when this thing is written, but a lot of the styling is this is again, this is reality. A lot of people have these kind of sites where this is the old way of doing WordPress. It's custom PHP, so it's not a block theme. It's not a full site editor. This is kind of our earlier discussion about WordPress. 6.9 is going to be all this fancy collaboration stuff. Meanwhile, reality of WordPress is things like this. So real quickly, your home page, there should be a home page, single page template. I'm trying to find the home page. Normally it'd be either the main index template, or sometimes you can override your home page. So how do I know this? There's a whole theme hierarchy thing. So again, this is for learning for people. this we've gone over this before in the past, but this is how, I know it looks crazy. This is how WordPress really works behind the scenes. You know, by default, it looks for certain things. So your site front page, if you have a file called front-page.php, that controls your front page. If you don't, then if you have a home.php, that'll control it. If you don't, this is kind of a cascading hierarchy. Then it's index.php. So meanwhile, back in your site, as I'm looking at these, I don't see a home. I don't see a front page. So most likely it is the main index template. All right, good order. So back to the event details, events, new screen. So what we're trying to figure out is this thing. So if I inspect this, what is this box actually called? This box, it's a message box, right? So it's inside of a carousel. That's interesting. So there's a carousel component to this theme. Message
Okay,
box.
and I'll just jump in while you're
Yep.
doing that. For everyone else on who's joining us, this is again an example of I would say old. I'd be very curious, Dee, if you have an idea when it was originally developed, because this is listed as version 1.0. I mean, this could be done before we even had. I mean, there was a point when you didn't even have widgets. You didn't have pages. You didn't have menus. It all had to be coded in the theme. I don't think it's that old, but most of us will not have to deal with this level because of things like having themes that have the management of all these pieces in places where it's not hard coded in, but are option boxes or custom post types, or well, even widget areas have changed, although the widget areas use block elements. It used to be everything had to be done in the widget area. So we're kind of getting into the weeds of the way an old site was done. And sometimes we have to do this when we find something where it's like, all I want to do is change in the header, it's this wording, and we want to change that wording. And I've found this. That might be hard coded in the template, where you have to literally go into this code and then you find the part where that is, and you have to edit the content versus maybe changing a page title, which most of us are used to. So this is both a level of complexity, but to me, it's always interesting to kind of look under the hood, and we certainly are doing that.
So what I'm looking for, and I'm glad Peter was talking because it allowed me to continue searching on here, is so some of this, again, it's unwrapping the onion, or unpeeling the onion a little bit. So where I started with was, as I look at the page itself and I right-clicked and inspected, that's telling me how the HTML is being presented on the site. Now you have to work backwards to the theme to say, how is the theme building this HTML? That's what all those PHP files basically do. They build HTML that then shows as a web page. So anyway, this little box here is I was looking for a class called message box, and lo and behold, in this slider sub template part, there's something in here called message box. So it is getting this piece, sorry. Again, this is the way that PHP works. Other programming languages work like this too, is you can create and it's a good idea from a coding standpoint. You want to separate your code into little modules or parts or templates, whatever you want to call them, and they all work together. They can call other templates and things. That's great. But when you're debugging, it means you sometimes have to dig through a lot of stuff to find what you're looking for. So anyway, this seems to me to be the code that builds this message box, right? So this message box is pulling, as I understand it, it's going to pull something into this title. It's probably static upcoming events, and then it's pulling an image in here, which is probably coming from a blog post, I imagine. And then here's a list. This list has, a link probably to the blog post, and then this paragraph, event date, and then this number text field. So this is the one that you're saying, Dee, looks like there's an issue with how it's getting this. So let's understand just for a second how this thing is being built. So remember, the class is called number text. So somewhere in here, unless I'm mistaken, here we go. Number text. So it's checking if there's a start date, echo date is start date. So somehow this post meta should have a field in here called start date. So let us go back to your posts. And this is the, what is it called? It's the Freedom Trail, right? Farmington's Freedom Trail. And it's a sticky. That's good. So I'm going to just look at this post. Again, I won't edit this and change anything, but I'm assuming there's probably a custom field in here, perhaps, that, here we go, event date, begin the 7th, end the 27th. So that's what you're saying, Dee, that this goes on from one date until the end, right?
Yeah, it's nearly every Saturday between those two dates.
Right. So this thing, for people who are looking at this, unless I'm mistaken, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, this to me looks like a custom field that was added to this blog post. So they've basically taken a blog post and turned it into an event post, you know,
Right.
which you can do. Again, there's other tools now like the event calendar, which would do something similar. So they've added this thing in here, and it has it was funny, it had the begin date and an end date. But meanwhile, in the code, it is only using the start date. So my understanding of the way this is working is it's saying, and we can see this in the output, the event date equals, or colon, start date. It's basically echoing the start date. It's taking that field and it's putting it out there. So right now, this theme, the way it's built, they did not anticipate having an event that just goes beyond one day. So your theme does not support on that front page the ability to show more than that. Now, how could you rectify that? If you're comfortable with PHP, you could. An easy way to do it would be I would duplicate this event date. Let me rephrase that. So what you could do, and actually I could probably show it here easier. Let me inspect this. So remember, what I'm looking at here is just my local browser version of what we saw. So let's say I'm going to duplicate this element. So let's say we call this, what is it, the 25th is where it went to? Something like that. So again, this looks ugly, but you know what I mean? It's like you would have to change the PHP code to output something like this. So not for the faint of heart, but but basically it would be a coding change to change this, to then add another, or to add a dash in between here.
Yeah.
To say event, starts this date, dash ends this date. So let me show you again. I'm not gonna save anything here, but if people are interested, here's my quick 5-second way of how I would perhaps change this code. It's a new file. Let's say new text file. No. New files over here. New text file. So I would do something perhaps like, and again, just remember that you don't really need. I can just make it easier for us to read, something like that. So it's taking the start date and saying echoing, this start date, and then it could be dash, and then you would echo again. I would to be proper. You probably would then want to check if there's actually an end date. So it would be something like, again, this is wrong, so this code won't run, but imagine this is what your code would look like. End date. I'm assuming end date is what that field is called. Begin, end, So that's where it's a little tricky. You'd have to actually find out what is this field called, because it's pulling this data from, let's wind it down. Oh, you know what? They're not even using advanced custom fields. Okay, you'd have to find out what the name of that field is. Hopefully they call it end date, but this is basically what the code would do. You'd have to modify your code to say, take the start date, which it's already doing, put a dash in there. Maybe I don't recall, the dash would have to be perhaps double quoted or something. And then you would take the end date and concatenate them together so it looks like from this to that. long story short, it's not super complex to do, but you can easily break your site. If you put a dash in the wrong place, you miss the semicolon, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yeah, Ray and I have different definitions of what complex means. Because you have, this is the way that these files are interconnected in Ray. I'm looking at the functions.php file. For everybody, functions.php for a classic theme is the big file, the kind of the main file for, and that's where you would do things. And there are things like including, there's lots of includes. There's an include custom post type, just like you said, theme option. There's the menus are being set in functions PHP. I mean, it is. I would be really curious when this was created, because it feels like this.
I think it goes back 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels
really that long ago, but it's in WordPress years.
Right, that's true.
That's quite a bit.
Wouldn't it be a lot easier if we eliminate the PHP part altogether and just put in something that says see dates here with a link?
Well, that's PHP as well too. So here again, I've just modified this thing on my browser. So let me refresh the page. So if you're saying removing things is simple. So let's say you wanted to remove the date entirely. That's easy. That's just deleting the code that does that. I don't think you want to do that, but it already has a view more, which if they click on this, I assume on this post, boy, where does it even use the end dates? Boy, this is another problem. So here it says event date. It doesn't even
the dates are on that page a little further down.
Are they in the text though, or are they actually? Yeah, they're here, but they're not. I guess what I was saying, Dee, is that it's not using. I don't think this date is being actually used anywhere on that post. So this end date.
I looked at it until I was cross-eyed and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from.
I would think it would have used it in this calendar. It doesn't look like it's necessarily doing that. So it's tough. So again, the thing is, working on a site like this, if you're actively building the new one, it's like, how much do you want to go back and change the theme files that you're going to throw away, I
don't think so. I think it's going to be better to start from scratch.
Yeah.
I want a simple website. This one is way too complicated. It's not optimized for mobile. The whole timeline thing again.
Yeah, if I look at it just for people who want to see this is the widget. So here's what it looks like on mobile. Not so great, but that's very similar to that site that I'm working on.
They weren't even thinking about this. They admitted that to me.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. 4 years ago, people had cell phones back then, but whatever.
Can't even reproduce it. Yeah.
Yeah, mobile was tougher, I guess, back then. So I think that's going to be the big question is. It's more of how long can they live with this until you build a new one. And again, when we say build, I want to be precise. I think it's rebuild because I'll do this real quick. And again, just don't be afraid because I think we've done this before. But let's say, for example, if I wanted to look at, I'm going to get out of all these windows so I don't actually save anything, which I won't. I just want to make sure I don't save. Let me close out of all this junk. So just as something as simple as let's pretend I'll use one of the existing ones, but I would highly recommend use something like let's go to 2024. If you just do a preview of this is just switching it for me, not for everyone on the site or anything like that. But this is in that view. This is probably not the best one because this is the blog view. What was the one? Peter, was it 2017? One of them was more of a site. So WordPress itself, these themes that they show you as demonstration sites, they always try to highlight something different. I mean, again, this doesn't look great. I mean, obviously it's tough, but I think what this is showing you is that just switching to a new theme will automatically give you a whole bunch of, it'll change the look of your site quite drastically. Now, what's tough though is, I think, as Peter was saying too, that because it seems like there's a lot of stuff in the templates, you're going to have to rebuild, I think, a lot of things. So normally, if you're starting with an older WordPress theme that at least used things like the menus. So I'm curious out of this one. Now this one has, I guess it has the header navigation. So all this stuff will carry over to a new theme. So the blog posts will carry over. Menu items should carry over. Any custom coding that they did on the old theme won't carry over. So I'm saying when you switch to Cadence, for example, all that stuff will be gone. That'll be lost. So you have to kind of
Don't want it to carry over.
Yeah, exactly. So in many cases, you say, "Who cares? Good riddance. Get rid of it."
There you go.
Yeah, I would look at this and I go, after taking this kind of in-depth look to see how much of the functionality of the site is built into the code of a custom theme that was done quite a while ago. If you want to change anything, like you said, it's so incredibly complicated. This is one where I would do, and I'll actually introduce another option that's only a very recent option. So I would take the the first question is, how long do are you able to let the public see it as it is now, right? So if you can work on it, while the public is dealing this and kind of limp along, and then build this on a staging site or on your local site that you can then migrate over, that to me, there's a lot of copying and pasting. I don't know if there's we could look to see how many posts actually carry over to one for one. So if you have things in the post, but kind of everything else around it, I would just build from scratch, and then migrate everything over to the new site. So I don't know how long you can continue to present the other site.
Forever.
Okay.
That is my basic plan. What you just said.
Rebuild it off the side. Copy, if you can't find that you have a post, like I would take the site. I would either do something like, again, I don't know if your hosting gives you an option to set up a staging site, or you can spin up a site somewhere else, or use local, which is used to be local by Flywheel, but where you can build things and you can migrate the whole site over to see, well, what's in the pages and posts as they are now. Get rid of the theme, put in a new theme. We like Cadence, Astra, Generate Press, but I think Cadence again will fit for what I think you're going to try to do here. And then just build that and then migrate that all over back to your live server. I think it's going to be the easiest way to go. There is one other option that I've not explored. There's a new premium plugin called Theme Switcher Pro.
Wow.
It got a lot of attention in a short amount of time. But one of the things that's kind of interesting about this Theme Switcher Pro plugin, and I'll put the link in, is it allows you to have more than one theme working on a site at the same time.
Oh.
So it's not just switching and looking at. You can literally say these pages use this theme and these pages use that theme. It's kind of the shorthand to the whole thing, which is pretty intriguing to anyone who might need to migrate a site kind of over time, but still have the old site up.
It could be jarring to your users, though. I would say that's one where, personally, even though you can do something, doesn't mean you should do something. Yeah, I think that'd be quite jarring to people, but it's good to know. Again, I'm not poo-pooing. I think that's an interesting.
No. Again, but if you were working where a site where the homepage is hard coded, and works, but the things below it are using templates that don't work, you might say, you know what, that might be where you keep the homepage. It's an option. Again, WordPress, so many ways to do things. I think the best way to do it is, again, what you're talking about doing.
And to be kind of clear again, I think what you were saying, Peter, not sure, just to reiterate this 2D is more of, I would not recommend starting up a completely blank, brand new WordPress site and building the new site from a completely blank canvas or whatever you want to call it, because you can do that. Then you have a new problem of data migration, meaning, as I looked at it kind of quickly, you have 128 blog posts. I wouldn't want to get rid of those. Even if some of them are old, I personally wouldn't want to get rid of those because back to our SEO discussion before, don't delete those. There may be some interesting, even if it's an event that happened 4 years ago or something, you never know. That may be the cat paws thing I talked about. That may be the thing that drives somebody to your site. So what I would do is what Peter was suggesting is make a copy of the site, then switch to a new theme. It's going to look like everything's broken, but then you have to kind of rebuild it all page by page. Start with the home page, just like as if you were building brand new. Get the home page looking the way you want it to work. Get the home page and menus looking the way you want it to work. Then go to the next ones. So if I was doing this site, I would start with this home page, which luckily there's not a lot here to begin with. Design yourself a nice looking home page, figure out what you want here. You're probably gonna want more text here than there's almost no text on this page right now. Again, if you look at just, you don't have to go with these sites, but if you look at like this Enfield Historical Society or whatever, I think you're gonna probably want something more like this-ish. To me, a homepage, we talked about this in one of our earlier YouTube things, your homepage in some ways is kind of like the executive summary of your whole website. You want to show as many, here's what you're going to get later in the site if you want to, but try to bring it forward into the homepage, like previews of that if you can. So that's what I would do. So you don't lose the content. You can just redesign it, move things around, and definitely a theme like we mentioned, Cadence will be much, much easier to work with. And this whole idea about this, like I would get rid of this whole, if you're building this over in Cadence, let's say you like the big slider image, you can keep that. The upcoming events, I would do something like how these guys did it, either here, this is probably a block that got dropped in from the events calendar, or what was the other one with it? Was the Glastonbury one, I think.
One little piece of additional information, I'll put the link in. I did find what this actually is based on. It is a theme called the Curator, and then which reminded me, and again, this might be something you got to figure out how to do, is the coding for that. I think one of the biggest things is the timeline at the bottom of your homepage, and that timeline is a function created by that theme. So you would either decide that you don't need that to work that way, or to come up with a alternative to this.
I don't need it to work that way.
Okay.
This is the timeline thing. Oh, this thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
At the
kind of interesting. Yeah.
You look further through the site, you'll see it shows up on other pages, and it's very, very strange the way it's.
I don't think it's particularly helpful as a visitor.
Well, imagine from mobile too. This does not look great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But if
it's never going to work for a mobile site. So
Yeah.
I really want to, I'm leaning towards just getting rid of it altogether. Yes, I'm sure, Ray, you're right. I want to keep that content and maybe reuse it in some fashion down the road. But the whole timeline thing has got to go.
Yeah. So being able to get to those 128 posts, the 23 pages that you have, that content. Again, a benefit of something like WordPress is the fact that you keeping the content separate from the theme, although here it's a little bit closer tied together, but gives you those options. But
sorry, you were talking to. So one thing I always like to check too, because that's always a gotcha, is with a custom theme, is there really anything very custom about it? So what I mean by that is right now the homepage looks to me like, oh, you could rebuild this in anything. you'll know the site better than us, Dee. But as I look through every page right now, I'm like, okay, the About Us page, this looks fairly standard. Yeah, pretty simple. But what I saw, where was I? I saw a login page, and that was interesting. So where was that? Was it under membership? Where was I saw a member login page?
I'm not sure.
Right here. What is this? Oh, okay, it doesn't work.
I've never seen that before. Wow.
It's under this. So what concerned me was if the site did have some custom functionality, like for example, maybe people who were members of the Historical Society could actually sign on and create their own accounts and update their profiles and they could see when their membership expires, that kind of stuff. I mean, there are sites that let you do that. So if this had that kind of functionality built into it, then yeah, Cadence wouldn't solve everything you need.
No,
you know what I mean?
Don't need it.
But it looks like it doesn't work in the login thing. Maybe there was another site at one point that went to. So that just one. The ways to contribute doesn't work. Some of these
That's just a strange artifact that whoever built this didn't even notice.
Yeah. So again, that's from what I'm seeing kind of quickly, and there's parts here you probably would get rid of. These are the breadcrumbs. This doesn't make a lot of sense on a page like this. Oh yeah, it's only breadcrumbs on one page too. It's a little weird, but it shouldn't be that bad, I don't think, to rebuild this, even though it looks like there is a lot of contact. I think what was throwing me was all of those blog posts. I was looking for a blog link. It's not, it's under timeline, which really makes it a bit confusing. So these are all the blog posts, I think. Yeah, these are all the blog posts. So yeah, I wouldn't go changing any code, both because it's easy to break stuff, and it's probably also just not worth it, in the long term if you're switching over and rebuilding the site.
I know enough not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember I suggested for a topic what not to do?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Don't edit your own. Don't do what I do. Don't edit your theme files live unless you're trying to break a site.
Ray, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can I just put in 2 cents worth here on this?
Sure,
I think
absolutely.
very important. I think it's a very good example of stuff to. I mean, some of my first examinations would be on any state like any case like that would be, what version of WordPress is it running? Because a lot of themes you can't update to 6.8. And 2, what version of PHP are you running? Because if it's an old version, you can't get to 8 on PHP. So you're almost trapped into like redoing the theme. But I think there's 2 things that are everybody's friend in a case like this. One, of course, is AI. You use like ChatGPT 4, Gemini Pro, something like that is going to you feed it code and tell it please fix this for me, and it will. And the other good friend is Freelancer. If certain things are not critical and where it's like, hey, it's just an improved site, it's on 6.8, it's on PHP 8, it has the functionality, you could probably get, I got a guy in Vietnam, which I don't use very often. Most of my stuff is all hand coded by me. But, somebody from Vietnam or India would redo that site for like $200-300 and have all the content transferred over.
And I would also, those are great points too, Jim. And in particular, so like, I know your scenario is a little bit different, Dee, in that you're the volunteer, you're willing to give your time to help fix the site. But you're right, like Jim, I've worked on, again, through another client. Basically, they were supporting a nonprofit, and the nonprofit doesn't have any budget to do anything like that. So, I mean, meaning to rewrite or redesign the whole site. They just needed the thing fixed. So that's where I came in, and it's like, well, certain functions are no longer supported in PHP 8, so I had to fix those functions so that they could work. And then the site limps along for another 2 years, and hopefully some other person will fix it later down the road. It's a dangerous game to play, but
it is. And I just had a good sized nonprofit, and I said, listen, your site is old. It's got an old theme. It's clunky to work with. We're better off just like starting from scratch, making a new site that'll have everything the way we want it. No, we want to just fix it for now. And I gave them a good price on the new site, and they've spent more than what I offered them for a new site now on just clunking up the old one, which is still going to be clunky for all time. So
That sure does happen. I'm gonna share the screen here just to show something real quick that we didn't look at, which is the site health, and prompted by what Jim was saying, that it is running. So now this is a hosting issue that you might want to pay attention to. That we're on an older version of PHP, and there are some security issues. There are also security issues with an older theme that you're not sure how it's not getting updated, and what kind of code might be in there. So there are reasons to look at moving sooner rather than later, but looking at that hosting and seeing, hey, what can we do with what we've got that keeps the site running while you're doing the change, but also keeps it a little bit safe. I know that there's this area called Farmington, which looks like it's a place where somebody registers, and there's some kind of wacky stuff in there, and I couldn't see how that gets managed, because it wasn't like a delete these Bitcoin people account kind of stuff that might be in there. So a lot of little things can happen over time with a site that might have some old stuff with it, where people kind of poking at it and doing some things to it. So
I wonder if
just
that
thought
was
I'd
the
share
old
that.
member login thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. One last thing too, kind of what Jim was saying in terms of freelancer and all that. I think that's fine. And you're right, for people who, depending on your budget, Upwork, one of the other ones too. If like with all of those kind of things, sort of side tangent is, be very careful the amount of control you give to anybody else. And it's true of any onshore, offshore, developer, somebody you don't know, including people like Peter and myself. We seem friendly, but who knows? It's like, revoke it when we're done tonight. Delete our, admin accounts. So it's the same thing with, you can have somebody else work on your site. Make sure it's well backed up. Make sure you give them the minimum necessary credentials, things like that. But two other, just real quick from a nonprofit standpoint, because this is kind of where I first got involved in helping out too, is I don't know how well these work anymore. Years ago, I got involved in these. I don't have the time to do it anymore, but there's volunteermatch.org and Catch a Fire. So if you are a nonprofit and you do need help for certain things, let's say social media posting, some basic website support, this could be a good place for you to register and post it. That cat shelter that I still support 8 years later or so, that's kind of how I found them. I was like, I just want to do something good and sort of practice my skills as WordPress and all that. So you may find people there who are willing to help. Again, it depends on their knowledge. PHP stuff might be a little bit harder to find a problem like that, but just a general WordPress kind of volunteer thing. So Volunteer Match and Catch a Fire, I'd say for nonprofits, it might be a good resource as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. What else we got? We got a couple minutes left.
Thank you all.
Yep. Well, thanks, Dee. Any other kind of last ones? I know we're kind of hitting the end here. This is a great meetup. Wish it occurred more than once a month. Yeah, once a month is enough. I think we don't want to use up all of our our goodwill here. Let's see. Anything else back in the list of questions that we had?
Carla asked a question, but
she dropped off. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was hers real quick? Is there someone who can answer on it real quick? I know she'll, in case she watches it again. If not, I mean, we can wrap it up here a little bit early, because my room's getting hot in here too, because it is 83 degrees outside. Just tomorrow's gonna be worse.
I saw that I forgot who was it, maybe Eileen, tried Perplexity, asked a few questions. I was happy to see that. Even that question there, I don't want to fade us out of importance, but some of the questions, when you have specific sets, I'm using this and this, can you help? That's again where AI could help with some of the troubleshooting stuff. And of course,
that could never happen, fading you out of importance.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No, but it's the human interaction is much better. But yeah, but I started trying it when you were talking, And
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the invitation for the browser. So it's 200 a month, but you can sign up so that they send you an invitation.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I will say the other thing about AI coding is we had a demo a few months back. Is it's one of those like, be careful too that the AI can create some really junk code, like
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
kind of go off in a loop, and suddenly start creating stuff where you're like, well, this is nothing like what I wanted. So I should
Well,
plug that.
I'll tell a couple AI stories. One is, yeah, sometimes I use, if I have code that's not working and I'll go to another tool or say, can you troubleshoot it, things like that. But I'll tell you what, I had a quick story about something I did for a client where they have a photo contest. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice, allow people to put in, upload 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 files. Tell us how much. The form conditionally adds the entries, put it in. Okay, great. So Ray gave us 5 files. Isn't that great? Now we want to look at them. I went, oh, I should have created that like it's a custom post type where each image now is its own post, because then I could use them in like searches and galleries and things like that, because the images end up being their own post. So I said, well, the first thing I should have done using Fluent Forms is have those get written to its own post instead of just the Fluent Form, form entry. So I went and created something, and I went through a whole import export using WP all import and so I created this, and I'm like, but that doesn't really help me. All it does is now I have a post instead of a form entry. I want all separate ones. So I went to Claude, and through some back and forth. I mean, it didn't happen instantaneous, but the thing that I was most impressed with was Claude making more and better what I wanted, because it kind of understood. I thought it was just going to give me hit a button and now, basically I wanted to say, convert now. If this person gave me 5 photos, that's 5 entries into my new custom post type. This would put their name, make the title their name and their town, things like that. But what it gave me was basically a tool now in my admin that keeps track of what it's done, flags it, allows me to now, when new ones come in, just add those to it. So it now becomes, this bug has become a feature, because now you can kind of check things, bring those in, it checks, it does everything I want, and it built it as this extra kind of app on the site versus just I'll import it and good luck to you. It became a tool, and I was really kind of impressed at how much it actually volunteered. And that's because its training is also based on building apps and building things where a lot of this goes in. So keeping in mind where AI is getting, it's basically getting on training on something, and it kind of not overthought, but thought for me, oh, you're probably going to want to do this and this, and keep track of the numbers and tell me how many, and then batch processing, because that was one, the server was too slow, so it hung up, and I got a 504 error, and it was like, well, I'll give you the option. You want to do 3 at a time, 5 at a time, 10, it was,
You went above and beyond the requirements. That's good.
it really,
Now package that thing up here and sell it as a plugin.
I know, I'm gushing just because I got way more, and it doesn't exist in a plugin. It was such a very specific case, and that's again where AI can kind of come to the rescue in a lot of times.
Hopefully next month we'll show more AI stuff. I want to get back to the Google AI stuff that's built into Chrome again. I showed that a little bit last time, but I definitely want to play around with that a bit more too next month. So let's wrap it up here if that's okay with folks. So
I